Hello and welcome back to the sideboard here at StarCityGames.com, Milwaukee. We're in the Standard Open. We're in round 9 right now. We're excited because we have Mono Green Aggro by Mason Lange. He is X1, getting ready to go into round 10, hoping to draw for top 8.
That's the plan.
This deck was hilarious. Cedric Phillips and I just commentated your round 9 round against the control deck, and you just ran him over with green creatures. So,
yeah,
how did you come to this conclusion?
This was a product of misinformation. I read a Sam Black article on SCG Premium this week. He was talking about how he wasn't excited to play Mono Blue at the Invitational, and I kind of lost focus after that. And I was like, all right, Mono Blues might not be that popular this weekend. So what if I played a deck that can beat up on Esper and Black and can't ever beat Blue? And it led me to this deck list of a bunch of green guys that can never ever beat Thassa or Master of Waves.
Right.
But has a great control matchup and like 1-for-1 removal type of matchup. Then I found out Sam actually loved his deck and he went 8-0 with it, and it's all over the place, so that sucked. During the building process, I built it last night at like 1 a.m.
Like all good, like all best
a little
decks.
idea. And I wound up cutting all the cards that are normally good against Mono Blue that you'd expect to see. Polykrynos is absent. Skylashers, like, mistakenly absent. So there aren't any of like the specific blue hate cards that you normally expect to kind of see out of green decks.
Now, did you play against any Mono Blue today? You said you saw it running around.
I did play against it once. I think it was round 5, and it was a very close match. My opponent was on the play, which was awful. Frostburn Weird, Master of Waves are like big problem cards, and Tidebender Mage is obviously like a Flame Tongue Kavu, but it costs 2 mana. I was able to beat him in a close third game because he stumbled on his mana, and I was able to just put 8 power on the board on turn 2.
This is a deck that can punish that.
So I was able to beat him out, and I've dodged it ever since, thank God.
Nice. All right, well, let's go over this deck. You've got Elvish Mystic, you got Experiment 1 as your 1-drops. Now the fun begins at the 2-drop. You have Burning Tree Emissary, which can lead you into Brush Strider, the 3/1 Vigilance that you might know from Gatecrash Limited.
This guy was really hard to come to, actually. There's a 3/2 out of Born of the Gods that cost green.
Yes.
That was what I saw in these lists running around. We came to Burning Tree Emissary because we wanted to be able to flood the board against Esper and Black. They were trying to 1-for-1 remove you a lot, outside of maybe a Supreme Verdict. So the idea that you could puke more than one guy onto the board on turn 2 was important. And Brush Strider was the only thing we could find that we could cast off Burning Tree Emissary that wasn't maybe a 1-drop. Not to mention the curve of Experiment 1 into Burning Tree Emissary Brush Strider gets him to his 3rd evolve, which is really important. It puts 8 power on the board on turn 2, one of which can regenerate through a Supreme Verdict, so it's pretty solid.
That's pretty powerful. Also, of course, you have Colonian Tusker. Just your 2-mana dude.
2-mana dude. He's a little bit better than the 3/2.
Yeah, Setessan something or other.
Sure, Satine Course.
Yeah, he's passed around in drafts. And,
that guy.
But of course, with Burning Tree Emissary into the Brush Strider, the Burning Tree is also important for Reverent Hunter, your 3-drop Devotion to Green creature.
Reverent Hunter is a big one. It's the only thing in the deck that says Devotion, except Nylea, which is a 1-off. A lot of the time, you're not slamming your Burning Tree Emissary on turn 2 because you don't always want to play your Scavenging Ooze into their removal. You want to save it for late game. And you don't always want... You sometimes want to play your Colonian Tusker.
Right.
So a lot of the time, I was waiting until turn 3 to cast Burning Tree Emissary so that I could go straight into Revenant Hunter.
Even more powerful, yeah. So you can do like Experiment 1 into Tusker, then you can do Burning Tree into Reverent, and you just have
You have
massive
so
creature.
much power on the board unless they Supreme Verdict you.
That's insane.
It's super difficult to beat.
Right. Other fun cards to look at, you got a couple Scavenging Ooze, another card, like you said, you don't really want to play off Burning Tree, but you can.
Yeah.
Then you have Slaughterhorn. Slaughterhorn is, as Patrick Sullivan has called it, the poor man's Bubble Belt Mocking.
It's so funny to think of it that way because you don't consider either of those cards high on the list.
Right. Another card that is just a draft all-star, so to speak.
He's fantastic. We were testing, so I played about 6 test games with this deck against Esper, and we were playing Aspect to the Hydra. Gives +1/+1 for your Devotion to Green.
Right.
And sometimes it gave you like +7/+7. That was sweet. Other times it was worse than Giant Growth, and we wanted to find something right in the middle. We came to Slaughterhorn because we think I thought it was a little bit better than Giant Growth.
Okay.
And
Sometimes
he's a
gives you the
guy,
body.
I played him under my camera match, I just played him as a guy and got killed, I think.
And he got this. Another thing to look at in this deck is your one-ofs. Well, a two-of and a one-of. One-of Ranger's Guile, just for the blowouts. And of course you have Mending Touch, a card that is seen in sideboards like Naya Hexproof, a couple other decks to get them, and they cast Supreme Verdict. Of course I saw you use that in Game 3 against the control deck here in the last round. Supreme Verdict kept a dude alive. He didn't have a second verdict and you just killed him.
Between Experiment 1 and Mending Touch, you can sometimes set up positions against control decks where you have a Mutavault, an Experiment 1 with 2 counters, and any other creature. You force them into the Supreme Verdict on turn 4, and you already know that you're going to Mending Touch one of your 3-drops, get this, animate a Mutavault, and kill it. Like,
wow.
It's fantastic, and I knew I wanted to have 4 and 75.
Yeah, we were kind of concerned when we were looking over the deck, like, well, how does it beat Supreme Verdict and stuff? And then you've got that line of play you just mentioned, and, you know, Mutavaults, because you're playing mono green, you're not playing a multicolor aggro deck, you can actually play Mutavault and not be punished for it. So
the sweet land base of 19 forests and 4 Mutavaults.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your other 3-drop / 5-drop, Boonsatyr, another great card against the control decks.
Boonsatyr is probably the best card in the deck, maybe next to Burning Emissary. It solves almost all of the problems that the green deck had anyway, which is like hasty damage, no kind of reach in the deck. So being able to play him on 5 and get in that surprise damage, maybe end of turn him and get in as though he had haste, is huge.
Yeah.
It gives the slow sorcery speed creatures a way to get in for damage.
Boonsatyr is one of my favorites too. Let's take a look at sideboard real quick. You've got a bunch of stuff, you know, 4 Mistcutter Hydra, great against blue and blue-white. You've got Nylea's Disciple, great against the burn decks, also good for devotion, helps your, you know, Reverend Hunter. 3 Dryad Militant is an interesting one in the board.
Dryad Militant was a kind of a last-second sideboard. I was thinking about the way that my matchups against Black and Esper would play out. I really liked the way my main board is configured, and I don't want to change it too much, so I usually bring in the Militants when I know that I want to play a 1-drop into as many other creatures as I possibly can. I only have 8 1-drops. Elvish Mystic isn't that impressive, especially when they're going to Supreme Verdict you. So you want to have an extra 1-drop, in this case a 2-power 1-drop, that helps you flood the board and get ahead of their removal. This card matches up insanely well against cards like Devour Flesh, Hero's Downfall, Detention Sphere. Everything is like kind of 1-for-1-y in this format, I feel, and this card helps you get ahead of them.
Also good against just the control decks as an early beater, and if they're on the Elixir plan, gets rid of their Sphinx's Revelations and Supreme Verdicts if it happens to go that far.
I haven't had it come up against blue-white, but I really wanted it to. Like, Elixir, shuffle 2 cards back.
But of course, last kind of options are a couple more Mending Touches, a Scavenging Ooze, and a Bramble Crush, which you said is a mistake.
Bramble Crush was a mistake. I had a 15th slot, and I couldn't decide what it was going to be. It was going to be the card out of Born of the Gods that deals damage to each flyer equal to your devotion to green.
Sky Reaping.
Sky Reaping, that's what it's called. Didn't know, it was in Korean. I opted out of that one because I didn't want to play against Mono Blue at all. I decided on Bramble Crush, thinking it was going to be good against maybe Burn to get their Chain to the Rocks, well, the land that was on the Chain to the Rocks, maybe Underworld Connections, maybe Detention Sphere, maybe Elspeth. And this card's garbage, and I would never play it again.
Excellent. Well, the deck is sweet. You've already won 1 SCG Open back in Madison a couple years ago. Hoping to draw in to another top 8. I'm excited. I want to see more of this deck. So your X1 going into round 10 for Mason Lange. I'm Nick Miller in the sideboard. Stay tuned for more action here in Milwaukee on StarCityGames.com.